Hi everyone, I'm Sam Wilson Jr., and this is the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast, the music podcast on where I interview singers and musicians from genres of black music, gospel, jazz, blues, old school classic soul, old school hip hop, today's hip hop and R&B, Caribbean, Latin, Afrobeat, Afro-Latina, blue-eyed soul, disco, go-go, line dances, and the Lost 45s. So come with me as I take you on to a trip to the destination genre of black music right now on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Legal Shield is a proud sponsor of the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Have you been involved in any types of accidents? Have you been a victim of identity theft? Have you been a victim of a computer fraud scam? Have you been in disputes with your tenants or landlords? If your loved one dies and they didn't write up a will for you or for your family, or you and your spouse are filing for divorce, or if you need help by opening up your small business, give Legal Shield a try. Visit their website at LegalShield.com and tell them you heard it here on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Do it today. You'll be glad you did. Welcome to a bonus episode of the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. I'm Sam Wilson Jr. And yes, Saturday is my birthday. Saturday, October 18th. As you can see, Riverside is doing something new. They're trying to make it wide like a flat screen TV. So when you see some of the episodes on YouTube in the upcoming weeks ahead, everything is going to be like a flat screen TV filmed in Panavision style. So you're going to be seeing this episode on Saturday, October 18th. Now, originally, I was going to do it audio for those that may have a hard time. So I said to myself, you know what? Let's try to do something different. And since this is season 5, I'm going to try to do something different on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. I want to say thank you all for tuning in for these past 5 seasons. Ever since I've been doing the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast since October of 2021. Special shout out to my paternal cousin, whom I haven't met yet, Mr. Philip Perry, representing the Wilson Dix / Howard Guzman family. And he was the one who suggested me to do a music podcast. And yes, I'm still waiting for him to hook me up with his aunt to get me a hold of some guests, some classic soul singers or groups. And ever since we started doing the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast back in October 2021. So for the first 2 seasons, I was doing music and talking. But then the folks at Spotify said I was playing a lot of music but not doing all the talking, so they discontinued. So there goes my fun. So then by season 3, I got a chance to interview some of my former CBS co-workers who I delivered packages to, some of them that I didn't know that were in music. Back then, it was singers or in groups, and then when they all parted ways, they had to find regular jobs, to pay the rent and everything. But there was something that I got a chance to interview. I got a chance to interview some of my former CBS co-workers. One worked in the photo department. Other one was a sports reporter for WCBS News Radio 880 and went and changed gears over to ESPN and MSG Network and at WBGO 89.9 FM. And there was some more. I got a chance to interview some of my paternal relatives representing the Middleton Wilson Dix family. One of my cousins who became a member of the Recording Academy,
Cousin Tammy, we love you. And also to a couple of my other cousins, including Cousin Robert Bellinger and Cousin Al and Cousin Jen Barris. Thank you, cousins, for participating in season 3 of my podcast. And also, a special shout out to one of my folks that I once worked at AM 1460 WVOX with their sister station 93.5 FM WRTM, which later changed to WVIP. I've interviewed Chris the Disco Kid, who was the host of The Night Flight, and I was the technical director for his show. And yes, I've interviewed a couple of my Truman classmates who were DJs, and one had worked for Essence magazine. I got a chance to interview my maternal cousin, Kurt Jones. Now, for those of you who may not know, that is my maternal cousin representing the Thomas Bowles Jones family. And yes, his uncle, my cousin Ernest Bowles, was the first black to be hired at CBS, which is now Viacom CBS Paramount, now Paramount Skydance Media. Yes, CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System, makers of I Love Lucy, The Carol Burnett Show, The Charlie Brown Specials, All in the Family, Magnum P.I., Simon and Simon, Dallas, Knots Landing, and the Grammys and the Tonys and the Kennedy Center Honors, and Walter Cronkite and the NFL, NCAA, and 60 Minutes. For radio, it was CBS, AM, and FM radio stations across the country, and CBS had records where they had Michael Jackson, Johnny Mathis, Barbra Streisand, Bruce Springsteen, Miles Davis, Mahalia Jackson, and yes, they had took care of Philadelphia International Records, where they had the OJs, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, Teddy Pendergrass, the 3 Degrees, and their house band MFSB. They took care of T-Net Records, which was the home of the Isley Brothers, and later they took care of Def Jam Recordings, which had LL Cool J, Public Enemy, and the Beastie Boys. And yes, they also took care of Taboo Records, which was founded by the late Clarence Avant, where they had Sherelle, Alexander O'Neill, and Brainstorm. So that was the CBS that I have worked for 35 years. So a special shout out to my maternal cousin, Kurt Jones. Now, as I said, this is season number 5 of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast, and we're going to try something new. I was going to do audio, but I said, let's do something different and say thank you to all of those who've been tuning in to my video podcast episodes of season number 4 and 5. And you can check out all of them on YouTube. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. We started off from 1 subscriber and we're up to 96 subscribers. So again, thank you for tuning in. Let's get up to 10 more subscribers. We want to be in the hundreds, hopefully in the 120s, 130 subscribers, and taking my podcast on the road to promote my season, and yes, to share that with my maternal and paternal cousins, and yes, hopefully with my church members, to let them know what the podcast is all about. Yes, the podcast is something different. So in other words, if you want to check out the interviews that was aired on CBS Mornings or NBC's Today Show or Good Morning America, you're going to have to subscribe to the podcast. And ever since I've been doing this podcast since 2021, it's been wonderful, wonderful, and I mean wonderful roller coaster ride. So again, thank you for continuing your support to my podcast. Your support means a whole lot to me, and you make my birthday wish come true. So as I said, please continue to support my podcast. Let's keep this podcast going. Let's get up to 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 subscribers. And let's bring in some independent singers. Either they were on the major record labels or not on the major record labels. Not only that, I've interviewed my favorite radio DJs that I grew up on, and also some of the singers who does movie and TV themes. And yes, I've interviewed singers from around the world, from Canada to the UK to Africa and the Far East. And there's more to come. Although it was a risk taker, but it was a challenge. So again, thank you to all of my listeners. Please continue, and thank you for your support. Now, as I said, this is my birthday episode, celebrating birthday number 59. So I'm going to do something a little different on the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And well, I'm going to be doing my chronology birthday that fell on Saturday, October 18th. We're doing the year 1969, 1975, 1980, 1986, and 1997. So let us begin. Now, where were you on my birthday back in 1969? Well, 1969, Richard Nixon was our 37th president of the United States. In July, we had our first man on the moon. In court, the Charles Manson family were found guilty and committed in a series of murders in the Tate LaBianca killings. Now, it's Sharon Tate, actress and model. She was in the movie Valley of the Dolls back in 1967, and her boyfriend was director Roman Polanski. In New York City, a series of protests by the LGBTQ community and the teen police raid at the Stonewall Inn in New York City's Greenwich Village. It was a pivotal moment in the fight for gay rights. In sports, the New York Mets won the World Series. In the movies, United Artists, the studio that brought us the Pink Panther, the 007 movies, and the Rocky movies, was celebrating its 50th anniversary, and they had a couple of movies, which includes the 007 movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service, starring Australian actor George Lazenby. And that was his only role, and it starred the late Diana Rigg, who we all knew from The Avengers, who played Miss Emma Peel. That was aired on ABC. And the late Telly Savalas, who we all knew him later as Kojak. That was later aired on CBS. And yes, it was a big success at the box office. Another movie, Midnight Cowboy. It won an Oscar for Best Picture, and it was the first movie that was rated X. Now, for those of you who may not know, the Motion Picture Association of America, or MPAA, had bring us the rating system in 1967. We had rated G, PG, rated M, which was later PG-13, rated R, and rated X, which was later NC-17. And yes, it was the first motion picture ever to receive that Oscar, which starred Dustin Hoffman, Jon Voight, Sylvia Miles, Bernard Hughes, and Brenda Vaccaro. Another movie that came out in 1969, A Change of Habit, starring the late Elvis Presley, the late Mary Tyler Moore, and the late Barbara McNair. We also had The Love Bug, which starred the late Dean Jones, Michelle Lee, and the late Buddy Hackett. And another movie that we just had in 1969 is called If It's Tuesday, This Must Be Belgium, starring Ian McShane, the late Suzanne Flechette, the late Norman Fell, and the late Peggy Cass, and an all-star cast. And Joan Collins was in that movie too. On television, we was watching The Bill Cosby Show on NBC, starring Bill Cosby, who played school teacher Mr. Chet Kincaid. On ABC, we had The Brady Bunch, Love American Style, Room 222. We had a medical drama show called Marcus Welby MD, starring the late Robert Young, who played Marcus Welby MD. It also starred James Brolin as Dr. Stephen Kiley and Elena Verdugo, who played Consuelo Lopez. And yes, the birth of the TV movies. The ABC Movie of the Week was born. Yes, Barry Diller, who once was in charge of programming at ABC before he moved to Fox, brought us the ABC Movie of the Week. I'm sure you remember this. Now, in case you may not know, when I was at Barnes & Noble back in the early 2000s, Burt Bacharach, I was playing that. And then I played the song called Nikki. And that was, hey, wait a minute. Ain't that the theme from the ABC Movie of the Week? And ABC didn't ask Burt Bacharach to let him use that song for the anthology TV movie series, 90 Minutes of Shock. It was drama, it was horror, it was supernatural, less comedies, but it lasted for 5 seasons. It won 15 Emmy Awards for Best TV Movie or Miniseries. Some of its presentations were controversial, but if you get a chance, hope you'll tune into YouTube and see it for yourself. On PBS, the groundbreaking children's television series, and it's still on today, Sesame Street. Now, I had to watch Sesame Street on PBS, where I had to learn how to do the alphabets and numbers. And yes, you had the Jim Henson's Muppets, Bert and Ernie, Kermit the Frog, Cookie Monster, and Grover. And the guest stars, everyone from Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, Smokey Robinson, Harry Belafonte, Jose Feliciano, Luther Vandross, a young Luther Vandross back then. And yes, you had athletes including Jackie Robinson, Arthur Ashe, and actors James Earl Jones and Whitman Mayo. We all know him as Grady from Sanford and Son. And yes, you had singers Lou Rawls and singer Nina Simone. So that was the groundbreaking children's television series ever. Now, in music, we had the Woodstock Festival in upstate New York, and other songs including My Sharia Moore, performed by Stevie Wonder. It was a top 10 hit on Motown's Tamla label back in the summer of 1969. It was number 4 on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts, and number 4 on Billboard's Soul Singles charts, and number 3 on Billboard's Easy Listening Singles charts. Now, the number 1 song, I Can't Get Next to You by the Temptations. That was number 1 hit on Motown's Gordy label. And guess what? The song went to number 1 on my birthday, October 18th, 1969, for 2 weeks, and number 1 on Billboard's Soul Singles charts on October 4th, 1969, for 5 weeks. And that song was later put on their LP called Puzzle People. Now, let's go to the year 1975. And yes, my birthday fell on Saturday, 1975. I turned 9 years old, and yes, wonderful time. Now, in 1975, Gerald Ford was our 38th president of the United States. And at that same year, President Ford had told the NYC to drop dead. We was going into the year of inflation, the recession. I never knew that the MTA was building the 2nd Avenue subway. and that was put its brakes in its hull. So never seen a Second Avenue subway. I didn't know about the Second Avenue subway, but by the time when 2016, no, not 2016, 2006, it started building, and 2016, I got a chance to ride on the Second Avenue subway for the first time. Now, in sports, well, before we get to sports, the war in Vietnam ended. That was the main topic back in 1975. Now we get to sports. The Cincinnati Reds beat the Boston Red Sox at the 1975 World Series after 4 games. So the Reds beat the Bo Sox 4 games. End of story. Now, in NBA, in basketball, the Golden State Warriors beat the Washington Bullets. 4 games, NBA Finals, done. In boxing, Muhammad Ali beat Smokin' Joe Frazier in Manila, Philippines. Now, that was Ali's favorite poem, "There'll be a thriller in Manila." Yep, that was the title of that boxing match. Now, where were you in 1975 when you had these movies? We had Jaws, the box office hit of 1975, based on a novel by Peter Benchley, directed by Steven Spielberg. It had Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw, and Lorraine Gary. #1 hit at the box office. Yep, people were afraid to go in the water. You had that shark. So today, you have those shark attacks every single summer. Also in 1975, we had Cooley High, which starred Glenn Turman, Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, and Garrett Morris. Also in 1975, Jacqueline Suzanne's Once Is Not Enough with an all-star cast. You had Kirk Douglas, David Jensen, Brenda Vaccaro, George Hamilton, the Tan Man, and Deborah Rappin, who played January. Also in 1975, The Return of the Pink Panther, starring the late Peter Sellers as Inspector Clouseau, and also The Drowning Pool, which starred the late Paul Newman and the young Melanie Griffith. Also, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which starred Jack Nicholson. It won for Best Picture for 1975. Also, we had some other movies, including Let's Do It Again, starring Sidney Poitier, Bill Cosby, along with Denise Nicholas, Miss Lee Chamberlain, Jimmy J.J. Walker, John Amos, Calvin Lockhart, and Ozzie Davis. On television, NBC's Saturday Night Live made its debut back on October of 1975. The first guest host was the late George Carlin, and we had 2 musical guests, which includes the late Billy Preston and Janice Ian. And still up to this date, after 50 years, it is still making everyone laugh live on the cutting edge. You have all those stars went on to superstardom, and too bad I didn't stay up and watch Saturday Night Live, and I didn't know that they had these stars that became superstars like John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, Jane Curtin, excuse me, Garrett Morris, Lorraine Newman, Bill Murray, and Gilda Radner. So now it's going on to its 51st season. We have some new characters and, yes, new cast and some more guest hosts. So congrats to Saturday Night Live after 50 years on NBC. Also, we had some new shows on CBS, including One Day at a Time. 60 Minutes moved to Sunday. Dan Rather joins the cast. ABC, they had Welcome Back, Kotter. Starsky and Hutch, and we had some mid-season replacements. CBS had The Jeffersons, which was a spinoff from All in the Family, and Barney Miller. That too was a mid-season replacement on ABC. And Beretta. That too was a mid-season replacement on ABC, which was later known as Toma. And let's check out the music, shall we? Now, in 1975, you had these hits, including The Games People Play. Yes, they just can't stop it. You can see it. Number one on Billboard's Soul Singles Charts. It was on my birthday, October 18th, for 1 week. And that was from the LP entitled Pick of the Litter. Who can ever believe that the song went to number one on Billboard's Soul Singles Charts back on my birthday, October 18th, 1975. Oh, we had some of those novelty songs too. As I mentioned, Jaws the movie. Now they had a little spoof up novelty song called Mr. Jaws by Dickie Goodman. Yep. Those were some of those novelty songs that they do a little song and then they'll just take cuts from different songs in there. So those were those novelty songs back then. So that was way before we heard some of those songs that had a little cussing with explicit lyrics. Now, let's take you to the year of 1980. So, 1980, we was going through a year of everything. The year when President Carter lost to Ronald Reagan. Now, Carter was our 39th president, Jimmy Carter, the peanut guy coming out of Plains, Georgia. He lost to the movie actor Ronald Reagan, who became our 40th president of the United States. We were still dealing with our hostages, was held in Iran and for 410 days plus. One of our favorite comedians, Richard Pryor, was trying to commit suicide. And while I was doing my homework, my late mother was saying, I'm trying to watch the news. I want to find out what happened to Richard Pryor. And then I found out the following morning, Richard Pryor was trying to commit suicide. Then putting everything over his body and burn himself to death. I was like, man, what something that you'll take your life away from it. So rest in peace to comedian Richard Pryor. Also, I was around when Easter 1980, MTA had its transit strike. And that was started on April 1st, 1980. I was off for the Easter week. I couldn't go nowhere. I couldn't go to my paternal grandmother's apartment in Midtown Manhattan. I had to mind my little sister. So Monday, March 31st, transit strike. April 1st, the beginning of transit strike. It only lasted for 10 days. So they settled the agreement and everything was all good. Now, speaking of that, the actors went on strike from May to August. So all of our favorite returning shows were put on hold until further notice. And on that same year, the Summer Olympics boycotted in Moscow. But earlier, we got a chance to check out the Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, New York. Yep. In sports, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the LA Rams at Super Bowl 14. And yes, the LA Lakers beat the Philly 76ers. 4 games. Done. And yes, Larry Holmes beat Muhammad Ali in 11 rounds. And that was at the end of September of 1980. And yes, Sugar Ray Leonard was beaten by Roberto Duran That was back in June for 15 rounds, but it wasn't on ABC, it was on cable. In the movies, we had Used Cars, we had The Empire Strikes Back, we had Holy Moses, which starred Richard Pryor, John Ritter, Dudley Moore, and Lorraine Newman, and John Houseman. The movie Airplane came out. It starred Robert Hayes and Julie Haggerty and Lloyd Bridges. That was a spoof from all of those disaster movies. That's from the guys of Jim Abrams and David and Jerry Zucker. Also came out The Fifth Floor, which starred Patty D'Arbanville Quinn and Bo Hopkins. This was a true story about a young lady who's been put in a mental institution. Also, there were some other movies came out in 1980. You had Rich Kids, Foxes, which had Jodie Foster and Scott Baio and Sally Kellerman. And of course, Stephen King's The Shining, which starred Jack Nicholson and the late Shelley Duvall and the late Scatman Crothers. On TV, we had The Monte Carlo Show, which was aired in syndication, and also Solid Gold. Y'all remember the show Solid Gold, hosted by Dionne Warwick, and every week they have a co-host, and of course the Solid Gold dancers will bring us the top 10 songs for the week. So, are we watching Solid Gold every Saturday night on Pix 11 in New York City? So 6 o'clock I'll be watching reruns of the original Star Trek, and then 7 o'clock Dance Fever, and then at 7:30 Solid Gold. So it was on from 1980 all the way up until 1989. Now there were some hits and misses. NBC had a miss with Pink Lady and Jeff Allman, but it didn't last that long. You only had 2 Asian chicks, even though they sing, but not that speak that much English. So that was a miss. Also, you had these hits, including It's a Living on ABC, Too Close for Comfort, and That's Incredible. That was a mid-season replacement. That was aired back in January 1980. And also you had Those Amazing Animals, hosted by Burgess Meredith, Jim Stafford, and Priscilla Presley. Also you had I'm a Big Girl Now, which had Diana Canova and the late Danny Thomas. And of course you had Ladies Man on CBS, and Ennis. That's a spinoff from The Dukes of Hazzard. Now, in music, you had Ray Goodman and Brown, better known as the Moments back then, performing Special Lady, and that was about in March of 1980. Also, you had I'm Coming Out and Upside Down, performed by Diana Ross, number 1, back in September of 1980 on the Motown label, number 1 on both Hot 100 Pop Singles charts and on the Soul Singles charts. Now, let me see, we can find it here. Yes. Upside Down. Yep, Upside Down by Diana Ross back in September 6, 1980. And that was for 4 weeks. Oh, let's not leave out this one. Another one, Bites the Dust. Performed by Queen. Number 1 on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts on October 4th, 1980 for 3 weeks. And that fell right on my birthday. That's right. So when 107.5 WBLS played that song, I would never knew they would play that funky bass guitar. Boom, boom, boom. So I love that song. Queen, another one, Bites the Dust. And yes, remember Funkin' for Jamaica, which was by jazz musician Mr. Tom Brown. Yep, number 1 on Billboard's Soul Singles charts back on October 4th, 1980. Yep, and that was there for 4 weeks, and that fell on my birthday. Funkin' for Jamaica. That's Jamaica Queens, New York, not Jamaica, West Indies. So that fell on that. Speaking of Jamaica, Stevie Wonder, check this out. Performing with the late Bob Marley. He did the song called Master Blaster Jammin'. And that was from his LP entitled Hotter Than July. That was on Motown's Tamla label. The album was released back in the summer of 1980. Just had Master Blaster Jammin'. And yes, the song Happy Birthday. That LP was dedicated to the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We had some other hits back in 1980, including Love TKO by the late Teddy Pendergrass from his LP TP, and also Tina Marie, Behind the Groove and I Need Your Lovin'. Now, when I was listening to WBLS on Black Radio, I would never knew that this lady was white. We thought she was black. But when I saw her performing on Soul Train on my birthday, October 18th, 1980, she was white. The funky white girl, the queen of Ivory Soul, the late Tina Marie. She had those hits back in 1980. So rest in peace to the one and only Miss Tina Marie. Also, we had some hits back in 1980. We had And the Beat Goes On by the Whispers, #1 hit on Billboard's Soul Singles Charts back in the spring of 1980. Also, Don't Say Goodnight by the Isley Brothers. That too also #1 back in the spring of 1980. We had other top 10 hits including He's So Shy by the Pointer Sisters, Late in the Evening from the movie One Trick Pony by Mr. Paul Simon, Gimme the Night by Mr. George Benson, top 10 hit. It crossed over on Billboard's Soul Singles Charts, Adult Contemporary, and Pop. And yes, the album was produced by Mr. Quincy Jones on Quincy Jones's new label called Quest. Also, Celebration, and that was from Kool and the Gang. And yes, Kool and the Gang, #1 hit back in December of 1980. And yes, it became a #1 hit on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles Charts back in January 1981. That song was later used by the time when Carter left office back in January of 1981. I was in school at IS 144. I was listening to Reagan's inauguration celebration. That was on January 20th, 1981, on a Tuesday. And when 12 noon came in, we heard the news that all of the 50 American hostages were free. So, Celebration was that #1 hit on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles Charts. Yep, that was all of 1980. And yes, we don't want to leave out these other tunes, including Working My Way Back to You, Forgive Me Girl by the Spinners. Also, Hall & Oates with their remake of You Lost That Lovin' Feelin'. Imagine by the late Olivia Newton-John from the movie Xanadu. Let Me Be Your Angel by Miss Stacy Lattisaw. Now, let's go into the year 1986. All right. 1986, Ronald Reagan was our 40th president, got reelected for his second term. And yes, the Iran-Contra affair was still going on. The space shuttle Challenger exploded. And we've lost all of our astronauts, which includes a science teacher and also brother man Ronald McNair. We were celebrating the 100th birthday of the Statue of Liberty after going its renovation for, like 5 or 6 months. When I first saw that PSA from the Ad Council about the Statue of Liberty, going in decay, deterioration. And yes, that PSA really scared me. So when you hear those words, if you believe in me, save me. So it was put a lot of hard work in restoring the Statue of Liberty just in time for the Liberty Weekend celebration. Now, I was around when they had that Liberty Weekend celebration. We thought it was going to be over at Perry Point Park in the Bronx before you hit the Whitestone Bridge. I said, no, it was over at Manhattan. So we had to run back home and watch the Liberty celebration. Yes, indeed. Now, on television, we was watching A Current Affair, hosted by Maury Povich. And this was something new because on that same year, Mr. Rupert Murdoch, owner of 20th Century Fox and the New York Post, had bought Metro Media Television and left Metro Media Radio out. So I was coming home from choir rehearsal. WNYW-TV Channel 5 has now become WNYW-TV Fox Channel 5. I just mentioned A Current Affair, Making News with Maury Povich. So everything was all changing. It was the end of an era for all of our favorite networks. It was the me decade. CBS was sold to Mr. Lawrence Tisch. NBC was sold to General Electric. And ABC was sold to Capital Cities. In sports, the New York Mets beat the Boston Red Sox. There was like 5, 6, 7 games. And I was watching it on my birthday, October 18th. It was game 1 of the World Series at Shea Stadium. And let me tell you, it was a whole week. I think it was 5 or 6, 7 games. Stayed up until quarter to 12 on NBC. At around 11:45, the game was finished. We had to wait until Monday, and the Mets won the World Series. Now, in football, the Chicago Bears beat the New England Patriots 46-10, Super Bowl 20. And on that same year, the Chicago Bears had a music video called the Super Bowl Shuffle. And yes, the Boston Celtics beat the Houston Rockets at the 1986 finals. Also in sports, Marvelous Marvin Hagler beat John McGully in 11 rounds on March 10th. And Iron Mike Tyson beats Trevor Berbick in 2 rounds on November 22nd. At the U.S. Open, Ivan Lendl won in the men's final and Martina Navratilova in the women's finals. In the movies of 1986, we was watching Police Academy 3, Ruthless People, Back to School, Aliens, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, and Round Midnight. On television, we had some hits, including Amen and LA Law on NBC. We also had Alf, also on NBC. You had some mid-season replacements back in early of 1986, include The Charmings and He's the Mayor on ABC. Joe Bash, also on ABC. You had some other ones that came in 1986, some cartoons, including The Real Ghostbusters, aired on ABC Saturday morning, and The Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show, and The Flintstone Kids, all aired on ABC, and also The Pound Puppies. You had some other hits, including Pee-wee's Playhouse, aired on CBS Saturday morning, and Head of the Class on ABC. We was watching The Oprah Winfrey Show, aired in syndication, Life with Lucy on ABC, and you had David Brenner's Nightlife, aired in syndication. That was aired on WABC TV Channel 7, New York, right after Nightline. And of course, Fox had its first late night talk show, The Late Show, starring Joan Rivers. Well, it didn't last that long, only lasted for 1 season. And There was some different replacements on there, but didn't last that long. So there you have Fox's first take on late night. In music, we had Janet Jackson with her second album, Control, produced by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. And you had this song, When I Think of You. Yep, number one on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts. And it premiered on October 11th for 2 weeks on my birthday. Yep, for 2 weeks. So I had that on my birthday. Janet Jackson was flying high with her second album, Control. Made it number one hit, all those top 10 number one hits. And also, Word Up by Cameo. That's right, Word Up by Cameo, number one on Billboard's R&B Black Singles charts. And that came out on October 4th, 1980 for 4 weeks. That's right. We've seen Larry Blackman. He was wearing that crew top, and you know what? That was his trademark. So that was some of the hits of 1986. And let's not leave out Stacy Q. At first, Freestyle, I thought she was black. But when I saw the music video, oh, she was white, but she got soul. Stacy Q performing Two of Hearts. It was a top 10 hit on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts at number 3, and that was from her debut LP called Better Than Heaven. And that was released on the day before my birthday, October 17th, 1986. The album went to number 59 on Billboard's Top 200 Albums charts and number 46 on Billboard's R&B Black Albums charts. And speaking of that, she made her acting debut on The Facts of Life on NBC. She played the role of Cinnamon. Yes. So hats off to Stacy Q. So Stacy Q, if you're out there, I would love to interview you on my Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Last but not least, we go to the year 1997. Bill Clinton was our 42nd President of the United States in his second term. In the news, Princess Diana was in a car crash on August 31st, 1990, but she later died in the hospital. March 8, 1997, the notorious B.I.G. was shot and killed after leaving an event in Los Angeles on March 9th. When my little sister woke me up and said, "Hey, Biggie Smalls was killed." And when we went downstairs, we was watching something on MTV. We heard the news on MTV News that Biggie Smalls, Big Papa, the notorious B.I.G. was shot and killed. So that was a really shocker right there. In tennis, at the U.S. Open, Patrick Raffer won for the men's finals and Martina Hingis won for the women's finals. In golf, Tiger Woods won at the Masters. In sports, the Green Bay Packers beat the New England Patriots 35-21 at Super Bowl 31. The Chicago Bulls beat the Utah Jazz 4 games, swept it at the NBA Finals. The WNBA makes its debut back in 1997 after the success of the 1996 Summer Olympics. So the Houston Comets beat the New York Liberty. In boxing, Oscar De La Hoya beat Miguel Angel Gonzalez in 12 rounds. But the worst, the unexpected year of 1997 in sports and boxing, Mike Tyson bit off Evander Holyfield's ear. That was in round 3 of the WBA boxing championship. Mike Tyson was later suspended and had to pay a $3 million fine, and his license was suspended too for biting off Evander Holyfield's ear. That was the talk of the town back in June of 1997. So Mike Tyson said, basically, I just snapped. Yep, that's really happening. That was the talk of the town of 1997. In movies, we had the box office hits including Men in Black, also Liar Liar starring Jim Carrey, Anaconda, which had J-Lo and Ice Cube, The Fifth Element, which starred Bruce Willis and comedian Chris Tucker, The Lost World, which is a sequel to Jurassic Park, Air Force One, which starred Harrison Ford, Gary Oldman, and Glenn Close. We had G.I. Jane starring Demi Moore, and we had Kiss the Girls starring Ashley Judd and Morgan Freeman, and the box office movie I Know What You Did Last Summer, which starred Jennifer Love Hewitt and Sarah Michelle Gellar, and the box office hit Titanic. On television, we was watching South Park on Comedy Central, and it's still going on today. Those four rowdy kids with all that rowdy language on that show. And yes, you had the late Isaac Hayes. He was on that show too, played the voice of Chef. And back then, the Emergency Broadcasting System has changed its name to the Emergency Alert System. So I'm sure we all remember that when we hear this announcement. This is a test. For the next 60 seconds, the station will conduct the test of the Emergency Broadcast System. This is only a test. So then later, you had the Emergency Alert System. Beep, beep, boop. And that was it. So we always have the Emergency Alert System. On television, we had the TV version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer aired on the WB, which starred Sarah Michelle Gellar. Also, we had Oz on HBO. Also, we had these hits on UPM, including Good News, Hits, and Head Over Heels. We have also Behind the Music, premiered on VH1. Ally McBeal aired on Fox. Dahmer and Greg on ABC. The Chris Rock Show on HBO. And 413 Hope Street, which was aired on Fox. In music, as we mentioned, the death of Princess Diana, Elton John had redid the song Candles in the Wind, and he made it up to date. It was called Candle in the Wind, 1997, in memory of Princess Diana. And the proceeds from the song had went to Princess Diana's charitable trust. So yes, we've lost Princess Diana in that crash and later died in the hospital of 1997. So we've lost Biggie in 1997 of March, and Lady died on August 31st, 1997. And on Billboard's R&B and hip-hop singles charts, You Make Me Wanna by Usher, number one on Billboard's R&B and hip-hop singles charts for 11 weeks. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. My chronology of my birthday that fell on October 18th, 1969, 1975, 1980, 1986, and 1997. Again, I want to say thank you all for tuning in to my birthday episode as I bring you the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. This is my 5th season of bringing you independent singers and musicians from genres of black music, whether they're from gospel, jazz, blues, old school classic soul, old school hip hop, today's hip hop and R&B, Caribbean, Latin, Afrobeat, Afro-Latina, blue-eyed soul, disco, go-go, line dances, and the Lost 45s. And there's more to come. So again, thank you all for tuning in for these past 5 seasons. Thank you all for those who have been tuning in on YouTube from season 4 up until the present of season 5. Thank you so much for all of your subscription, your support. We were at 96 subscribers, and let's get up to 100. Let's make it up to 120, 150, 250, 350, 450. We have some more guests to interview. We'll still continue that mission of interviewing singers and musicians from genres of black music from the US to Canada to the UK to Africa to the Far East. And you'll never know who I'm going to be interviewing next. So make sure you please tune in. Please pass it on to your family, relatives, your friends, your neighbors, your co-workers, your colleagues, your classmates, your church members, and for those that may not know. Thank you all for making my birthday wish come true as I bring you the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Now, if you want to check out this episode, please subscribe by going to the link. The link is riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson Jr.'s. Don't forget to add the S at the end, -studio. And yes, I will be posting this episode on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And if you have a hard time getting on to riverside.fm, then please become a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. All you need to do is go to the Patreon homepage, make sure you put in your email address and your password, and you'll get a chance to see the Patreon homepage where you see all of the Patreon shows done by different creators. And make sure you go to the top and make sure you type in the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Make sure you check out all of my audio and video podcast episodes and video podcast clips that you may have missed. And if you have a hard time getting on to patreon.com, then I will be posting this episode on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. All you need to do is just check out my birthday episode. That's all I'm saying is thank you, because I'm giving the love back to you. If you like this episode, the bonus episode that is, if you love my podcast, please subscribe, please support, please give me a thumbs up, please leave a comment, and please pass it on. Thank you for joining me as I bring you my 59th birthday celebration, my bonus episode, my birthday episode. Thank you for making my birthday wish come true as I close out this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience.
Well, that's about it for this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. I'm Sam Wilson Jr. Thank you for joining me, and please tune in next week for an all-new episode. The Black Soul Music Experience podcast is sponsored by the support of listeners and viewers like you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe by going to riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson Jr.'s-studio. And don't forget to check out my audio and video podcast episodes by becoming a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And also check out my video podcast episodes by subscribing to youtube.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And please leave your comments, feedbacks, and replies by going to my Facebook homepage. Visit facebook.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. You can also tweet me on X, aka Twitter, at Sam Wilson Jr. 66. As always, partying, remember this: reach for the top, and your dreams will come true, and it can happen to you. From all of us, take care. God bless. Thanks for listening. Have a good week, and please be safe.